Alabama's defense has improved, as Landmine Believers said. Don't let the Tide get hot. Defense has improved 40 spots in 2 games. Meanwhile, Little T and I were down at Auburn to see a slugfest, not a smooth game of Auburn, number 16 in the country, beating a Texas A&M team that was projected by the coaches to finish second in the league this year, but is off to an 0-2 start.
Yeah, look, Texas A&M. I think they got a ton of talent, and Jay Williams pointed this out on the broadcast. Wade Taylor IV, your preseason SEC Player of the Year, had by far his worst game. Was 0 of 8 behind the arc. He was 2 of 16, and you could see the body language. I mean, when it was a tight game in the final 4 or 5 minutes, they needed a big shot, and Jay Will's like, he's got to get out of this funk. You can see his body language is awful. And it was almost like he was pouting because he was so bad, and all they needed was one big shot to maybe turn the momentum.
As I watched the game, Brownie, it didn't look like, he tells me that, okay, that kid's the alpha. I was watching the game not knowing a ton about Texas A&M, and I was like, I can't tell who really their go-to guy is out there.
Well, that
should have been their go-to guy. It normally is their go-to guy.
That was a key win for Auburn, and it had nothing to do with standings or rankings or where A&M is in the KenPom or where A&M is in the net, which, by the way, is 40th in the net, 35th in the KenPom. So it's not that's a pretty good team right there.
Quad 1 win.
Yeah.
Lenardi's got them in.
So, but it had everything to do with the fact that was one of Auburn's kryptonites in the SEC. They have struggled with Buzz Williams and A&M.
Even at Auburn Arena.
Yeah, everywhere. I think Buzz was 5-1, if I am not mistaken, against Auburn in his time there. So You could throw everything else out the window. That's a team you've struggled with. To get that win at home was huge.
Yeah, look, and I think Alabama fans will roll their eyes at this, but this is a reason that Auburn can not only go to a Final Four, they could ultimately win a championship. You just look at the bench and what the bench did last Saturday against Arkansas, outscoring them 46-9. Last night it was 26-6 over A&M. They're so deep, but even when they're off, 39% from the field, 22% behind the arc, they can win with defense. And limiting A&M to 55 and holding a guy like Wade Taylor IV to 2 of 16 from the field, it shows you that Auburn is a well-rounded elite team.
Yep, and that was a point of conversation I had with Brad Law pre-game. You can go watch that on our social media platform. He's a Village Vice on Disrupt the Media. You can get them almost every day over there. All Auburn content, football, and on basketball and everything else that goes on Auburn. But Rockstar, give me cut 3. Before we play, Bruce, I want to give you the question that Little T and I talked about a little bit on the way down, and talked to Brad Law and a couple other people about this, a few of the fans. Auburn had that Final Four team. They had that team with Jabari and Walker Kessler that was fantastic, and then sort of, flamed out in the second round of the NCAA tournament. And I made this point last night, and I want to see if you guys agree. The Final Four team this time of the year, that year, really didn't get hot until February, and then started playing their best basketball into the NCAA tournament and into the Final Four. That Jabari and Walker team, I thought this time of year, that back then was the best team in the country at one point. I thought they could win it all.
I remember going on, I think it was a Sunday or Monday show from Indianapolis, and I said that. I was like, I think this Auburn team right now, and so that was early January 2022. Yeah. I was like, I think they're the best team in college basketball. And I'm just saying, and people are already saying I'm on my gummies and that kind of stuff. This team is so balanced, and there's so much parity in college basketball. We saw Nebraska dick whip Purdue last night. You saw Houston go down at Iowa State. It's a wide open year this year.
And that was my question, Brown, was can you look at this team and see that maybe they have the talent to make an Elite Eight Final Four run?
Yes, I think absolutely. I think they've got the construct. The one thing that is hurting them in any of the analytics, and especially the net, where they're still behind Alabama, is they don't have any quad 1 wins. So that has kind of hurt them. And like if they seeded the tournament today, which obviously they do not, I don't think Auburn will be a 1 seed, but I think Auburn will be a 2 or 3 seed probably. So yes, I mean that's the kind of atmosphere they are playing in right now.
Well, and these games aren't even close. 8 straight wins since that loss. They've averaged those wins by 23.3 points per game. I would say this: if Auburn really wants to get to a Final Four and win championships, they've got to get more consistent play from the guards. I mean, Holloway, we know he's going to be really good, but he's got to be more consistent.
Like, I am looking at this right now. I think you've got to go all the way down to Princeton to find the next team that doesn't have a quad one win. And Auburn just, their schedule.
Did last night not count as a Q1?
No, it's quad two. I think A&M is 35th.
Yeah, A&M 0-3 against ranked teams right now.
Yeah, I think A&M is 35th. So, yeah, it's going to be a quad two for both Alabama and Auburn last night. By the way, South Carolina is somewhere in the 50s, I think 50s or 60s.
A&M would have been a quad one win if it had been a road game.
Yes,
right?
yes. Road or neutral site. Yeah, it's top 30 at home. So yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that if you're trying to judge Auburn against other teams, you would say, who have they beat of substance?
That's right. Okay, that's a good point.
I mean, I'm not trying to discount last night's win. I just started the show by saying it's a good win for Auburn simply because of your history with that team. But here's the rest of the story. They're going to play plenty of teams of substance in the Southeastern Conference. Alabama and Tennessee and the Kentuckys of the world. They're going to play plenty of those. So you're going to know what Auburn is. Right now, looking at them, they look like a team that could definitely make a Final Four.
Yeah, look, and I mean, you look at the losses, the two losses, by a combined 12 points. One of those losses to Baylor. We know Baylor is a solid top 15 squad. But again, you can talk about there's no quad one wins. But when you're beating Indiana by 28 points, when you're beating
They're destroying
USC by 16, you're beating Arkansas on the road by 32. These games aren't even close.
And by the way, all three of those teams you just mentioned, going into the season, were all supposed to be quad one wins.
Yeah.
I will say this, though, and Scott is showing you the KenPom, and I was about to bring this up before Scott even popped it up there. Auburn is fourth in the most recent KenPom, and the net is what is used to seed the tournament in part. Excuse me, my apologies. The net is what's used to seed the tournament, but the coaches will tell you they live and die by that ranking right there, the KenPom.
Yeah, and by the way, Houston, that's new KenPom today, but Houston and Purdue went down last night.
Yeah, the KenPom, if you want it to react like a poll, it is not going to do that. It's not going to just overreact based on a loss.
I don't believe college basketball really starts until college football is done.
Well,
and how
here you
about
go.
So
college
started last night?
Yeah,
But, I mean, how
week
weird
one?
is that? Yeah, you've got the national championship on Monday, and then on Tuesday night, both number 1 and number 2 go down.
That's right.
Interesting stat before we hear from Bruce Pearl about that, LT. And I know you probably saw this. The last time that happened was 2016, that 1 and 2 lost in the same night. And did you see what happened to those two teams in 2016?
Wasn't it Gonzaga and Houston?
I think it was Gonzaga in Oklahoma. It was Oklahoma and somebody,
Okay.
I remember. And it was Oklahoma and North Carolina.
Okay.
That's who it was. And they ended up both losing. Last time 1 and 2 lost the same night, but also they both made the Final Four that year.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to overreact. I
Yeah.
mean, Houston went to an incredibly difficult place to play.
You know, we talk about
And
Jordan Hare. I thought about this last night watching some of that game.
Hilton Coliseum
Yeah, Jordan
or
Hare
Arena, whatever it is.
in college football is arguably the most difficult place to play. I think Hilton Coliseum, and I was wondering if it's still Hilton Coliseum, that to me seems like one of the most intimidating atmospheres in all of college
Well, they call it
basketball.
Hilton Magic. I mean, that's what they were calling it last night, a little Hilton Magic for Iowa State. And I'm with you. It seems like a place where undefeated teams go to die.
It was 14-0 to start that game.
I don't think – I'll look it up right now, but am I right that at the under-12 timeout, Houston had 2 points?
Yeah.
I think they only had 2 points at the under-12.
Again, it was 14-0 to start that game.
So the fact that Houston came back and almost won the game was pretty remarkable,
This
actually.
Iowa State program, sneaky good. I mean, they've got 7 top 10 wins over the last 2 years. That's more than anybody else in college basketball.
Yeah, it
The
was
mayor's not there anymore. He's coaching
No.
Nebraska, right?
Yeah.
Who got the win over number 1 Purdue last night. And nobody's allergic to the numeral 1 more than Purdue is, whether it's being a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament or number 1 in the country.
Yeah.
This is the 4th time in the last 2 years as the number 1 team that they've lost to an unranked team.
Well, I think coming into this season, the most pressure on any coach in college football was probably Jim Harbaugh, and he pays it off with a national championship. But I think it goes back to the Big Ten in basketball. Matt Painter has never had a deep run. He's had these incredible rosters. And after losing to a 16 last year, you got Edey back this year. If you don't make something happen in this tournament, I can't even imagine the pressure around this team once we get to March.
I agree 100% with you. They will potentially be the overall number 1 seed, and they have not handled that very well. And when you go back to Houston, I mean, that's the thing. They're an elite defensive team every year. Kelvin Sampson is an elite defensive coach.
Built into the cake.
You always worry about their offense at some point, right? And what you got last night, where I just looked it up, they had 3 points at the 10:50 mark. That's when they scored to break over 3 points. They had a 3 to move it to 6 at the 10:50 mark.
10:50 of the first half.
Of the first half, you do that.
Remember Auburn, Houston? We were watching that game at the
Yes.
NCAA tournament last year. First half, it looked like Auburn was cruising on to the Sweet 16. And then the second half, they flipped the script.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of that was the free throw strike for Auburn, but that Houston defense cranked up the intensity, and they're able to do that. And this is going to be so much fun with Houston watching them play a Big 12 schedule.
Yep.
Like the American is a good conference. The American in basketball is not the Big 12 by any stretch of the imagination. And seeing Houston go on the road, their next set of games, or coming up pretty soon. They're at Kansas and at Texas and back-to-back at the end of January, early February. I mean, that's going to be fun to
Talk
watch.
about cannibalizing each other. By the way, Lance's lock, 3-0 away from the Big 12, 0-2 in the Big 12 last night.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I
3
would stay
and 2
away
on the
from Big
night.
12.
Yeah, we
games.
had West Virginia at home last night. We had BYU on the road. It looked like BYU was going to be good early against Baylor. That was a quality game that I didn't watch because it was on ESPN Plus, but continue to see the score updating.
Pretend Big 12 basketball games are 11 a.m. kickoffs, and you're fine.
Or Super Bowls.
Yeah, this
Or
might have been a
Super Bowls.
one-off. I will tell you, this league, though, man, I mean,
What, the Big
is.
12?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
just Texas ranked, really good Texas team on the road at Cincinnati last night, barely wins by 1.
Yeah, but Cincinnati was undefeated at home, so that Cincinnati team is, I don't know where they are.
Also in the Big 12. That's just shows you how tough the league is.
You mean-
Where does
you know where they
KenPom
are.
have Cincinnati? Yeah, because they were 12-2 going into that game. They were undefeated at home. They were 1-0 in the
you
Big
want
12.
KenPom, not the net, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a big net fan.
Are you not?
You can,
I
never,
mean-
you can never give me. I know that's what the committee uses.
I mean, I try to tell you that every time. Yeah, Cincinnati's 32 in KenPom.
Yeah, so I mean, that's, again, not ranked, 32 in KenPom. This is a deep league.
Yeah, it really is. And the SEC maybe has a few top-heavy teams. We'll see if Auburn is one of them down the stretch. More on Alabama's win in a second. But our legacycreditunion.com, sound of the night from Bruce Pearl. The question I was asking these guys, got asked to Bruce last night. Is there a chance that this could be one of his best teams since he's been at Auburn? Here's BP.
Do you think this could be one of the best teams you've coached here at Auburn?
It's way too early to tell. This has been one of the hardest working teams that I've had. This team has improved more from the summer to the point we are right now more than probably any team I've had at Auburn. So we're just in. We put ourselves in position. We got work to do. Great crowd tonight. Unbelievable. Fantastic to have the students back. This was a record crowd in the history of Neville Arena for our students. A record crowd. So it's that's for Texas A&M on a Tuesday night. We're in everything school.
I don't know. I mean, I think most people are going to default to the Final Four team being his best team at Auburn because it went to the Final Four. I don't know that it was his best team. I mean, it was certainly in the discussion. There's no doubt.
People forget that final sequence in the first round, 13-4 against New Mexico State.
Yeah.
I mean, the narrative would be completely
there's no
different
doubt,
on
yeah.
a lot of different things. Watching Bruce coach, and he's always been this way, but there were guys like in football, Bo Pelini, Brian Kelly at Notre Dame, Bobby Huggins, wherever he was, Kansas State, West Virginia, Cincinnati. They scare me like they're going to coach their way into a cardiac. He
gets
is
after it,
so
doesn't he?
intense, so pissed. It doesn't matter if it's minute 1 or minute 40.
Yeah. At some point today on our social media platform, we did the question out with the students who were there. He was talking about the students, a record number of them. And if you don't know,
God, I saw y'all's pregame. Like, we used to walk up to Coleman Coliseum. You just walk straight in as a student.
by the way, no ticket needed.
I think you may still do that.
If you're
at
an
Coleman
Auburn
Coliseum.
student, it's all first come, first serve for the students. And so they get in line. Yesterday, I think they
There
told
it
us
is. Look at that.
12 hours that they started lining up out there.
Ain't a chance in it. Like, if
It's
I go to a
cold.
restaurant, they're like, we're on a 15-minute wait. Okay, I'm going
I
to
think
go
twice
next
that,
door. Now, I know it hits different when you're 19 standing in the cold.
But those students, they file in, and I think this was the policy last night. Maybe it's all new now. The student section fills up, and it's all the way down one side of the court and then half of the end zone. And then last night, the students were spilling up into the standing room only. And that was packed up there. It was just an amazing student section last night, as he was saying. And that home court advantage helps them, but then you got to go on the road. And that's why that Arkansas win was so big this past week, because they lost to App State in their only other true road game.
Which is weird when you go back. I know App
Yeah.
State's solid, but, I mean, like, you play that game again right now, I think you got a different result.
It could be the turning point game of the season, maybe. They played so much better at Arkansas. LSU at home, and then they're on the road at Vandy, which is a good placement for another road game, and then back home to Ole Miss, and we'll see what Ole Miss is for this Auburn team. If you're a Bama fan, the one thing you're just dying to see this team do is play defense and play physical. And last night, down 13-3, you're thinking to yourself, oh, crap, here we go. The South Carolina team's about to come to town.
Yep.
Little lethargic, late arriving crowd to start with at Coleman. You're thinking to yourself, this is about the team that was picked by the coaches to finish dead last and had upset Mississippi State over the weekend is on a roll. It's 13-3. And then you get a double technical. Some jawing from the South Carolina players and some jawing from the Alabama bench. Rockstar cut number 1. This sort of jump-started the rest of the night where South Carolina only scored basically 34 points after this double technical. Nate Oats gets asked, what the heck happened on the double technical? And Nate Oats lays it down.
Yeah, Coach Lamont Paris said he believed that double technical was instigated by your bench. Were you given an explanation for that call there in the second half?
They said that our guys were kind of talking. I mean, there's a lot of talking. That run they came out of the game 13, their guys were yelling at our bench for whatever reason, I don't know. I mean, they made the statement the SEC isn't ready for them. I guess we'll see if the SEC is ready for them. This SEC team was ready for them. They were talking an awful lot during the game. I don't condone us talking to the other team off the bench, but I heard what their guys were saying right out of the gate. So that quick 13-point run at the beginning of the game didn't last very long.
Yikes.
Nate Oats, by the way, he's not very soft when it comes to how he really feels.
He's straightforward.
He says basically they are up 13-3 and they're yelling at our bench saying the SEC ain't ready for us.
Yeah.
My guys were talking back. I don't condone it, but I heard what they were saying. And from that point forward, it was a different Alabama team.
I will quickly point out the next time Alabama and South Carolina play would be in Nashville for the SEC tournament. They will not face, for those that want to look ahead.
We can only hope we see that.
They will not face one another
So
again.
South Carolina closes 1-7, or 1 for 7 in the field in the first half, and then they miss their first 10 shots in the second half. But I agree with you. This is exactly, the 28-point win is nice, especially after they were talking shit and you turn on a dime. But more importantly, South Carolina held to a season low 47. Held to a season low 18 in the second half, and held to a season low 31% from the field. So if you're Alabama and everybody talks about all you can do is score, they look really good defensively, at least in the final 25 minutes last night.
To your point, I would trade the 67 instead of 87 just to see that defense. You know what I mean? 67 may not be enough to win it, but I love seeing finally a heartbeat on the defensive side.
You needed that.
Yeah.
I cannot independently confirm this. This is not something I've tracked. I will reach out to Ken Pomeroy and ask him if this is accurate. But Landmine Believer says Alabama's current offensive ranking at Ken Pom is the highest in the Ken Pom era.
Oh, wow.
Which I think goes back to 2002. I could be wrong about that, too.
I bet it doesn't go back to Jerry Tarkanian's UNLV team.
Yeah, I don't know how long Ken's been doing it.
That left their national championship in a hot tub in Vegas.
I'll be happy to reach out to him and ask him if that is accurate. But I do know what is accurate is it wasn't too long ago that Alabama was like 117 in their defensive efficiency on that ranking, and they're 60th now. They have cranked up the defensive play. And if they can continue playing offense, and this was, by the way, as some people are pointing out in the chat room, one of Alabama's worst offensive performances of the season so far, actually, and they won the game by almost 30.
Yeah, I agree
they won it going away.
With Royal Payne, and we've seen this the last couple of weeks, if Betty Ocko would have come back.
Oh, my goodness.
Different team.
This would be, we would be talking about Tennessee, Auburn, Kentucky, and maybe by the end of the season, Alabama will be there if they can play defense like they did last night. But Alabama would be right there with those teams with Betty Ocko.
Yeah, I would say this, that you've got, with Betty Ocko on this team, the way they can score the basketball, I think it gives a lot more comfort to the other players playing a bigger role defensively, having Betty Ocko back there to help them out like he did last year. They would have beaten one of those tough teams in that stretch where they didn't beat anybody,
Yeah, one of the
Purdue or Arizona. The
Creighton's.
Yeah, they would have won one of those games at least, which would change the whole landscape. The team's still very well thought of nationally. with the nation's toughest schedule.
Yeah, and I will say this about SEC play. I don't know that Alabama's played. I know South Carolina was a surprise team. I don't know how good South Carolina is going to be in the Southeastern Conference. So, and I said this about Auburn. You look at Auburn and you're like, what wins of substance do they have? And I would say that about Alabama, especially in the Southeastern Conference. I would say it about them in the Southeastern Conference. They don't really have a great win yet. State, that cranks it up a little bit for Alabama. You have to go on the road to State, a little better team than they've played in these first two conference games.
Exactly what I was about to point out, Brownie. You could not have had a better schedule to start out 2-0 for the fourth straight year in the SEC, but now you're on the road at Mississippi State, a team that is
28th in the Ken Palm. That's a good team.
Right now, they're desperate for a win because they weren't supposed to lose to South Carolina.
Yep.
By the way, at home tonight, they get number 5 Tennessee.
Yeah, you'll see how good Mississippi State is tonight, right? Because Tennessee is that's the most elite defensive team in the conference.
Tennessee may be the best team in the country, not just the conference.
They could beat anybody, no doubt.
The offense is what always plagues Rick Barnes, right? They just go in these
so much
runs.
experience at guard, though.
Yeah, but they're better, I think, offensively this year than they have been of late.
Well, I think
We'll
they
see.
lose tonight. I think Mississippi State wins the game.
You think Mississippi State
So
wins?
you got State playing Bama coming off a win over Tennessee.
over arguably the best team in the country.
Will they storm the court on that one?
I don't know, boy. They did in Lincoln last night. I don't blame them in Lincoln. I'm
No,
not a big
what have
field
they had?
stormer, court stormer. I don't know what they've been happy about in Lincoln for
Exactly.
a long time. But to beat number one like that and to beat them soundly.
Why not storm the court there? Cliff says, look at what Alabama did pre-SEC schedule. Alabama is good. That's what I was just talking about with the schedule. Ross is a Mississippi State guy. Tulu is just now coming back. Tulu Smith. Going to take him a while to get back to his former self. Had a little foul trouble in that South Carolina game. Didn't get his A game at all.